Today for online school, you guys have a couple of things that you are going to do. So, just in case you're watching this without reading through the instructions for the online school day, or just as a reminder, I'm going to go ahead and kind of outline those for you guys. So, first, you will be watching this screen recording video that is posted, and this is biological adaptation in Yellowstone. And as you go through this screen recording and these notes, there are guided notes that you guys will need to fill out and turn into me. There is a submission folder for these guided notes, which is also where you can find them. And this is worth 20 points, so don't skip out on taking notes as you listen to me do this. And then you guys will go ahead and do the invent an animal activity, and I'll kind of go through some examples of that at the very end of these notes. So if you're confused on the invent an animal activity because you didn't watch the lecture that I'm doing right now, welcome, and go back and do the activity after you get to the end of this. And then finally, the last thing you guys are going to do is post on the discussion board for your class, and those directions for the discussion post are on the Invent an Animal activity handout. And all of this is due by 11:59 p.m. tonight. And here we are going to go ahead and go through these notes. So pull up your guided notes, and they're going to go in order of what I'm talking through. So if you need to pause, go ahead and pause it as you're going through to fill these out. So again, we are talking today about biological adaptation in Yellowstone. Biological adaptation happens, of course, not just in Yellowstone, but in other places, really pretty much everywhere. So just to start out, on your own, so there's a place for you guys to answer this question. Obviously, you can't do the pair-share part of this, but go ahead and think on your own. In the last few days, it has gotten a little chilly outside. List at least 4 ways that you have adapted to reflect this change in the weather. So go ahead and pause here and answer those questions. So what are adaptations? Plants and animals have lived in the wild for millions of years, and in order to do so, they develop over time these adaptations that allow them to survive in the wild. And an adaptation is a change or the process of change by which an organism becomes better suited to its environment. And these adaptations can be either structural or they can be behavioral. These structural adaptations are when a physical feature of an organism has changed over time, and often these develop due to the environment of the animal. For example, a bird has feathers to help it fly, bears have fur to keep them warm in the winter, and Arctic marine mammals have blubber to keep them warm in the icy water. Some examples of these structural adaptations that we see in animals are camouflage and mimicry. Camouflage is something such as a color or shape that protects an animal from attack by making the animal difficult to see in the area around it. And mimicry is the superficial resemblance of 2 or more organisms that are not closely related. So camouflage is like what you see with the owl up here. That is the owl camouflaging to the tree. Oops. And here we have mimicry with this insect that is mimicking the identity, the structure, the look of a leaf. So some other things that we might see in terms of structural adaptations are imagine that there's a bird species, and one day there's a bird that's born with a beak that's longer than the beak of the other birds. And the longer beak helps the bird to catch more food, and because the bird can catch more food, it is healthier than the other birds. It lives longer and it breeds more. The bird passes this gene for the longer beak along, to its offspring, and its offspring also live longer. They have more offspring, and the gene continues to be inherited generation after generation. So structural adaptations, those are when the physical features, so the fur, the coloring, the legs, the beak of an animal develop based on changes in their environment, and these structural adaptations are passed on through generations. You can also have behavioral adaptations, and these are when an organism changes their behavior in order to survive. So they might change based on the climate that they're in, based on the season that they're in. It could be like the bird call, so having different bird calls depending on the area that you're in. Migration is an example. Hibernation is an example. Also, behavioral adaptations develop based on like fight or flight responses. And some of the main categories for behavioral adaptations are what an animal is able to eat, how an animal moves, how an animal may protect itself. Again, with hibernation and migration, those are kind of reactions to the climate, the temperature, the season that the animal finds itself in. So that's pretty much the notes for today. That's kind of the background information that you need to have in order to really do well with this activity. So in the activity, you guys have been asked to design a brand new animal. So the invent an animal activity. What you guys are tasked with doing is acting as bioengineers who are looking at animals who live in different habitats in Yellowstone. And you can choose from one of these 5 habitats: the lake or pond, the geyser basin, the stream or river, the marsh or the meadow. And all of those habitats have corresponding they have situations and descriptions, and you can find that list of habitats on Schoology, as well as where the activity itself is. So there are questions on this activity that go through asking you about what animal you've designed. And the purpose of this is to look at the habitat and look at what kind of adaptations an animal might have based on the habitat they live in. So you can design a totally new animal, or you can combine 2 different animals together. Either one of those is fine. I went ahead just as an example, and obviously because it's the example I'm using, it is not an example that you can use. You have to come up with something different. But my example was the jackalope. So kind of going through these questions that you guys are going to answer. The jackalope is a mythical animal of Northern American folklore. And here's a picture of the animal up here. And it, again, is called a jackalope. It's a combination of a jackrabbit and an antelope. And it does not lay eggs. It does give live birth like a bison. It is not really camouflaged except in the winter when it's kind of snowy colored. It is an herbivore. It eats plants. It does not get along well with bears, elk, or moose. It protects itself with horns. It does not hibernate. It also does not migrate. It spends most of its time in an open field, but it sleeps in a den. And here are some of the adaptations. So I went ahead and listed 5 adaptations just to give you guys an idea of what you should put down for your 5 adaptations. So the antelope antlers give it protection, and this is a structural adaptation. So obviously rabbits don't have antlers, but antelopes do. So combining those 2, I adapted the rabbit, the jackrabbit, to have antlers like the antelope. And it's a structural adaptation because it's a genetic variation of the jackrabbit. The second adaptation I have is that the jackrabbit is very fast, and this adaptation was passed on. And again, structural adaptation, that the jackrabbits are very fast. Jackrabbit males become aggressive in the spring to obtain mates. This is a behavioral adaptation, so they're changing something about their behavior. They were not aggressive before in the winter, and they become aggressive in the spring. Their behavior is changing. Antelopes are built for speed, not jumping, but jackrabbits can jump. So jackalopes, I said that they could jump. So jackrabbits can jump, antelopes cannot. So as a jackalope altogether, there has been a structural adaptation from the antelopes that now they can jump. And jackrabbits adapted from regular rabbits to live above ground, and the jackalope does as well, and this is a behavioral adaptation. So whatever animal you choose, and again, you guys can draw your animal, or you can like copy and paste the body of a bear with the head of an elk and the tail of a moose. That would be fine if you wanted to like copy and paste that in Notability. Or if you are really uncomfortable with drawing, obviously you can just list out, but I would much rather see your creative side to this. So if you guys still have questions on how to do this worksheet after you have watched this video, just let me know, but hopefully it's pretty straightforward. And that is the end of the notes in the video for today. And I will be available by email if you guys have any questions for me. So if you do, please just let me know. And that's all. Thank you.